All right, let's dive in. Today we're going international.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
Yeah, we're talking international relationships.
Nice.
We've got an article here, 7 Things I Learned from Being in an International Relationship by Sarah Lempa.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
on healthline.com, and was fascinating. It's
Sure.
like a rom-com, but also a cultural study, plus some real advice.
I like it. A little bit of everything.
Right. So if you're into this kind of deep dive, you know the drill. Hit that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Okay, ready to unpack what makes these relationships tick?
Absolutely. Let's decode it.
All right. Sarah jumps right into cultural differences, which can be tricky, but also really amazing.
Sure.
So, what are your thoughts on navigating those differences when you're in a romantic relationship with someone?
Well, I mean, misunderstandings are bound to happen, right?
Yeah.
You're coming from totally different backgrounds, different ways of looking at the world.
Right.
Like, what's polite in one culture could be super rude in another.
Oh, for sure.
The key is communication, being open, and willing to learn from each other.
I love that. And Sarah actually gives this hilarious example about arguing with a partner over how to pronounce aluminum.
Oh, that's classic.
Right. Just shows how even tiny things can cause friction, culturally speaking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, those little quirks, they're like these little windows into another culture.
Yeah.
You're not just getting to know the person, you're getting a glimpse of their whole background.
That's so true. It's like a built-in cultural exchange program, but, more romantic.
Exactly.
But, okay, on a slightly more serious note, Sarah talks about how relationship expectations can be so different across cultures.
Yeah.
Like when to use labels, partner or boyfriend, or what it means to be serious, committed.
Oh, yeah. Huge differences there.
So what kind of things influence those variations?
Well, there's a lot going on there. Societal norms, for sure, family structures, religious beliefs, even the economy can play a role. Like, think about cultures with arranged marriages. The whole idea of dating and choosing a partner might be completely foreign.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great point.
It is. It really highlights how different things can be.
And Sarah actually mentions that in her own international dating experiences, she's seen it all.
I bet.
Like fast-moving relationships and those that are really slow burn.
Oh, so she's seen both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, talk about a cultural whiplash. But it reminds us that there's no one right way to do relationships right.
Absolutely. What's normal in one place could be totally unheard of in another.
Exactly. But here's what I find fascinating. Even with those differences, people everywhere want connection, intimacy, love.
Oh, yeah, that's the common thread for sure.
Right. It makes you wonder if there are cultural things that predict these styles. Like some cultures are more individualistic, so maybe relationships develop more slowly.
Yeah, you're onto something there. Social psychologists actually use frameworks to analyze this stuff, like Hofstede's cultural dimensions.
Oh, interesting.
One of them is this individualism versus collectivism thing, which definitely could influence relationship dynamics.
Cool. So we've got cultural differences in communication styles and expectations.
Right.
But this next one is really interesting to me, emotional expression.
Okay, yeah.
The article even mentions this Gallup Global Emotions Report and how some cultures are way more expressive than others.
Right.
So why is that?
It all comes down to cultural norms.
Yeah.
What's considered appropriate or acceptable.
Makes sense.
In some cultures, showing emotion is encouraged. In others, it's all about being stoic, controlling your feelings.
Right.
Think of it like a volume knob for feelings. Some cultures have it cranked up. Others have it way down low.
I love that analogy.
That's a good one, right?
It is. And Sarah, being American, she admits she's even overwhelmed partners with her directness.
Oh, I can see that.
Right. So it just shows how crucial it is to understand cultural context when you're communicating.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, imagine someone from a high-context culture, where everything's subtle and unspoken, trying to understand someone from a low-context culture who's very direct.
Oh, yeah, that could be a recipe for disaster.
Right. It'd be like trying to read a book in a completely different language.
Exactly. You might get the general idea, but you're missing all the nuances.
And those nuances can be so important for building trust and intimacy.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just what you say, but how you say it and what you don't say.
This is already blowing my mind, and we haven't even gotten to long distance yet.
Oh, there's so much more to explore.
I know, right?
Okay, so should we talk about the big thing with international relationships?
The elephant in the room, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Long distance. It's often seen as this huge obstacle.
It can be, for sure.
But Sarah seems to have a different take on it.
Yeah, she describes it as feeling semi-normal in her experience.
Interesting.
What do you think she means by that?
Well, I think it shows that for a lot of international couples, distance is just part of their reality, you know.
Yeah, I can see that.
They might have family or friends in different countries or jobs that require them to move around.
Right.
So long distance isn't just a phase, it's kind of woven into their relationship.
That's a good point. So instead of dreading it, you kind of just factor it in?
Exactly. And while it definitely has its challenges, research actually shows that long-distance relationships can be just as satisfying.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes even more so than relationships where people are geographically close.
Wow. Why do you think that is?
Well, think about it. When you're not always together, you have to be more deliberate about communicating.
Yeah, you can't just take it for granted.
Exactly. You have to make the effort to stay connected, to share your thoughts and feelings, to create intimacy, even when you're physically apart.
It's like the distance forces you to be more present, more engaged.
That's a great way to put it. And then when you are together, those moments become even more special.
Yeah, I can see that.
You really savor the time you have.
But there have to be downsides, right? I mean, Sarah even talks about getting stuck in different countries because of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, for sure. There are definitely challenges.
That's a whole other level of distance and uncertainty.
It is. And things like pandemics, visas, family emergencies, those can all make things even harder.
Right, those curveballs.
But, going through those things together, it can actually make the relationship stronger.
You think so?
Yeah, you learn to adapt, to communicate under pressure, to be there for each other when things are tough.
That makes sense.
And those are valuable skills, not just for the relationship, but for life in general.
It sounds like flexibility and patience are key in these kinds of relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial. You're constantly adjusting to time zones, cultural expectations, unexpected situations.
It takes a lot of work.
It does. You have to be willing to let go of rigid expectations and embrace the unexpected.
And be okay with things not going according to plan.
Exactly. Which reminds me, Sarah actually talks about having this screw it motto when it comes to love.
I love that.
Even if it means flying back home heartbroken, she's willing to take the risk.
So brave. Do you think that kind of attitude is common for people who choose international relationships?
I think there's often a sense of adventure, a willingness to step outside their comfort zone.
Makes sense.
They're not afraid of challenges. They see them as opportunities to grow.
And even if it doesn't work out, they've had these incredible experiences.
Right. And gain a broader perspective on the world.
It's like that saying, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all, but on a global scale.
Exactly. And that brings us to Sarah's last point, which I think is really beautiful.
What's that?
Even if an international romance ends, it always makes for a great story.
That's so true. These relationships are full of unique experiences, cultural clashes, deep connections.
No matter what happens, they leave a mark on you, shape who you become.
And those stories, those lessons, they can be valuable, not just for the people involved, but for anyone who hears them.
Absolutely. They challenge our assumptions about love and relationships and what's possible beyond our own culture.
It's like opening up a whole new world.
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating about this topic.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of international relationships.
Me too. It's a good reminder that love can bridge cultures, continents, even the toughest challenges.
Before we wrap up, I have one last question for you, and for our listeners, too.
Okay, I'm listening.
What's one thing you learned today that's changed how you think about international relationships?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's realizing that long distance, even though it's often seen as a bad thing, can actually be a strength in these relationships.
Interesting.
Yeah, pushes you to be more intentional, more communicative, more appreciative of the time you have together.
It's a different way of loving, but just as valid.
Exactly.
That's a beautiful insight. I'd love to hear what our listeners think, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Be sure to leave a comment and share your thoughts. As we're wrapping up this deep dive into international relationships, what strikes me is how much these experiences seem to really help people grow.
Yeah, like a crash course in understanding different cultures and getting better at dealing with emotions, right?
Absolutely. You're constantly in unfamiliar territory, literally and figuratively.
Right.
Learning new ways to communicate, adapting to different customs, and questioning everything you thought was the right way to do things.
It really pushes you out of your comfort zone.
And talk about building resilience.
Oh, yeah.
Dealing with visas, time zones, maybe even families who aren't thrilled about the relationship.
It's not easy.
Like Sarah said, you need a bit of that screw it attitude to just go for it.
I think that willingness to embrace uncertainty is so important.
For sure.
You have to be open to things maybe not going as planned, cultural clashes, even heartbreak.
Right, but you also have to trust that the journey itself, even with all the ups and downs, will be worth it.
Exactly. It's about the growth and the experience.
Even if the relationship doesn't last forever, you come away with so much, a broader perspective on the world.
And isn't that what life's all about? Learning, growing, connecting with people in meaningful ways, no matter where they're from or what language they speak.
It really makes you think, do people who've been in international relationships see the world differently? Are they more open-minded, more adaptable, more empathetic?
It's a great question. It makes you wonder.
Right.
While we can't say for sure, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a connection there.
Yeah.
They've had to confront their own biases, navigate cultural differences, build understanding across all kinds of divides.
Right. It changes you.
That kind of experience has to shape how you see the world.
It's like they've unlocked a whole new level of connection, something that goes beyond borders and cultural norms.
Beautifully said. It reminds us that even with all our differences, we all want connection, we all have the capacity for love, and that can bridge even the biggest gaps.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will hold on to?
If there's one thing I hope they remember, it's this. Don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone, embrace the unknown, explore the world in all its different cultures.
I love that.
You never know what you might discover, who you might connect with, or how it might change you.
That's such a powerful message and a perfect way to end our conversation.
It is. It really is.
If you're intrigued by Sarah's story and want to learn more, you can find the full article on healthline.com.
Yeah, check it out.
We've got the link in the episode description below. And that's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep those hearts and minds open to the beauty of human connection wherever you find it.